And you people, you're all astronauts on some kind of Star Trek.
Guys, I finally did it. It's not a Star Wars shirt. Let's talk Strange New Worlds. There will be spoilers. 4.5 Vulcans. It is 4, right? Yeah, 4.5 Vulcans. So the Enterprise is ready to go on shore leave, but then they get a distress call from a pre-warp civilization, and in order to not mess with the Prime Directive, the catch is they can only send in Vulcans. So naturally, they decide to genetically turn Pike, Uhura, Chapel, and La'an into Vulcans. They all turn into Vulcans. Them and Spock go down. They save the planet very, very quickly. And that part is done. Time for shore leave. Except they try to turn back into humans, but they can't, and it doesn't work. That's what happens. This is a very comedic episode. I feel like a lot of the comedy lands. I was laughing most of the time. The only thing to think about it is like the way they were playing the Vulcans. It didn't feel like they were playing Vulcan characters for the most part. It kind of felt they were playing like what my older brother would think a Vulcan is. For context, my older brother was a jock in high school and not a nerd and was not into any of this stuff. Not the point. But they were just playing like a parody that someone outside of Star Trek would think a Vulcan is, like especially Pike. It just didn't feel like they were playing real Vulcan characters, just like, what's the word I'm looking for? Just like a stereotype of what a Vulcan is. Anyways, I was thinking that through like about halfway through the episode. I was thinking that, but like I do feel like this episode sticks the landing with that. Like by the end, like I didn't feel that way. I felt like they told a very good story and they stuck the landing. Anyways, let's get to the story. Let's take it one Vulcan at a time. Pike. What's going on with Pike? So Batel wants to go back to work, basically. She wants to go back to work. They're not going to let her captain a starship at this point, but she can go back to law. So they invite the Vulcan admiral from season 2. Yeah, when number 1 was on trial. They invite that admiral who's in charge of the Starfleet's Judge Advocate branch to dinner in Pike's quarters to have a conversation and see if Batel can go back to being a lawyer. That goes. Vulcan Pike cooks Vulcan food, and him and this Vulcan admiral are getting along great and are very condescending towards Batel. In fact, when Batel is making her case to go back to law, like Pike is pointing out like all the reasons she couldn't, and then she just tells both of them off. And skipping ahead a little bit, at the end of the episode, once Pike's a human, they get a call from the Vulcan admiral. I don't remember his name, and he says, "Hey, I'm gonna retire. You can have my job when I'm done if you want it." So good news for Batel. All right, who else do we got? We got Uhura. So Uhura is on shore leave, has a date with Ortegas' brother, who I do know his name, but I'm just choosing to call him Ortegas' brother just because consistency with the rest of my videos. Anyways, and Vulcan Uhura is very like, you should have had a plan. Why didn't you have a plan? And convinces him to let her mind meld to make him more Vulcan, and then actual Ortegas, Erica, we're gonna use first names. Erica is like, that's messed up, and confronts Vulcan Uhura about this, and is like, hey, you might think that you're so much smarter now, but like if you don't realize how great my brother is, you're an idiot. And yeah, skipping ahead, once she's human again, she apologizes to Ortegas' brother, and they go on a real date as humans. Who else do we got? Chapel. Alright, Chapel is doing a lot of science stuff. Like she figures out how to turn them back into humans, plus a bunch of other experiments. It's getting no rest. breaks up with Corby, decides to break up with all of her friends because they're not efficient and she can get more done if she doesn't have friends or doesn't sleep. Yeah, that's basically how. I don't think she has like a real like climactic realizes she's wrong moment like the other characters do. Anyways, speaking of her figuring out how to turn them back, once she figures out how to turn them back, all the Vulcans decide, no, we're gonna stay Vulcans, and that's why a lot of this other stuff happens. And yeah, once they're humans again, she invites Corby and Spock for plomeek soup, and Spock is like, this isn't good. Which is funny, because there's an episode of the original series, A Mock Time. I reviewed it with Ryan on my podcast Smart Words yesterday, if you want to listen to that. Not the point. But where the episode starts with her making Spock plomeek soup, and he throws it against the wall. So part of me now wants to think it's because he knows it's bad. He knows it's bad. He remembers. Anyways, then we have La'an. La'an actually turns more into a Romulan than into a Vulcan. She's very like, I want to start a war. I want to give us more weapons. That kind of stuff. So her storyline involves Kirk and Scotty. So Kirk beams aboard to spend shore leave, to hang out with his brother for shore leave, because the Farragut's still getting repaired from the last time we saw it. But Sam's not there, so he hangs out with Scotty, and then Scotty and Kirk are just trying to stop La'an from like doing something incredibly dangerous. But yeah, ends with her trying to start a war between the Klingons and the Orions, and basically Scotty has to electrocute her to stop her from setting off a war. So let's talk about how they got them back to human. So they realize that they have to get to their Katras. Katras is a Vulcan thing. It's how Spock comes back to life in the movies, and not the point. But Spock's not like skilled enough to like deal with like their Katras, so they have to find someone who is. And nearby lives Number One's ex, who is a Vulcan. So they call him, and it's Patton Oswalt. He's fantastic as the Vulcan Doug. So yeah, Spock and Number One have to get Doug to help them. The scenes between Number One and Doug are very funny. Like, they're very into each other, and it's just like not a way that we usually see Number One. Anyways, yeah, so Doug helps out. All of the Vulcans become human again, except for La'an. Spock has to like go into like La'an's like mind Katra thing, and yeah, basically they have a discussion, and Spock's basically like, yeah, everyone else turned Vulcan, you turned. It was different. It was like you were conspiratorial, aggressive. And he points out that this is because she has Khan, that's an action figure, Khan DNA, that augment DNA, so she became more aggressive and less Vulcan. And then they have like a fist fight inside her mind, which turns into aggressive dancing, which eventually turns into La'an giving in to agreeing to become human again. One thing I want to point out about this, like, the scene inside La'an's mind started in what looked like cetacean ups, which I wouldn't think would be a thing in the pre-original series era. Like, in, like, Lower Decks and Prodigy, it makes sense, like, because, like, it doesn't make sense because at this point, like, whales should be extinct, because in Star Trek 4, Kirk and Spock had to go to the past and bring whales to the present, and that's why there's whales in Prodigy, which actually they actually named the whale after one of the characters from that movie. Anyways, if cetacean ops exist on the Enterprise at this point, it doesn't make sense. That's just me getting a little too nerdy, but hey, I'm a nerd. Anyways, So that's basically what happens. I do think this was a very good episode, even though there was a point I thought they were being a little too stereotypical. Like, I do think they stuck the landing. Like, I was laughing at most of the comedy. Like, I enjoyed like all the scenes between Kirk and Scotty. Like, those were great. Patton Oswalt was really good as a Vulcan. Doug the Vulcan. So yeah, I think that is it. That's my opinion. I want to hear from you. Let me know what you thought about it in the comments. While you're at it, do all the things. Like, subscribe, do whatever. You can find me on Instagram at Couch Talks Movies. And you can also check out my podcast, Tomorrow is Yesterday. Wherever you get your podcast, I review every episode of Star Trek with either my best friend David Moss or my wife and partner Ryan Couch. So yeah, till next time, live long and prosper.